The Philadelphia 76ers are officially back in the win column, picking up a victory over the Detroit Pistons, but in typical Sixers fashion, it does not come without a casualty, as Andre Drummond is the latest Sixer to be added to the list of injuries. However, there were some bright spots for this team, and this may have forced Nick Nurse into the correct decision for this Sixers franchise moving forward, as we saw a breakout performance from KJ Martin as well as a number of other young guys on this Sixers team. I'll reflect on what exactly went right and what went wrong. Not a lot, luckily, tonight, and that's the first real time all season that we're speaking about that with the Sixers. But first, let's pay a little bit of respect to Andre and acknowledge what happened today. So right here in the first quarter, literally 3 minutes and 33 seconds into this game, Andre Drummond comes down off a tip-in, rolls his ankle, had to be full out, just about carried to the locker room, and did not return, was immediately ruled out after the first quarter. Here's a little bit better of a look at it now. As you can see, that right ankle comes down and just snaps a little bit to the sideline there. Very unfortunate for Andre, and a zoomed up view here. I will say there was some fairly encouraging news from Nick Nurse in the postgame, saying it didn't seem to be as bad as it seemed to look. Obviously, we will see. We'll know more details, and I'm not taking anything for granted with the Sixers team. It's been about as bad of a stretch as possible, but let's get into what did go right in today's performance. A 111-96 victory over the Detroit Pistons here. Pretty strong showing from the team overall. To me, this was the most connected, the most team-oriented, the best passing that we've seen from the overall roster. It was a really impressive performance, and it was clear they showed up right from the opening whistle tonight. Now, as far as a couple standouts, then number one, Tyrese Maxey leading the way in his 35 minutes, finished with 28 points, had 6 assists, shot 5 of 10 from 3 there, also had 2 steals. I thought he was pretty active defensively as well, and it's really the bench unit that stole the show today. And to kind of highlight some of those guys, as I play with my green screen in the background here, then we got Ricky Gonzalez IV with 17 points off the bench, a nice spark of energy, also added 5 rebounds, and KJ Martin, really the story of the game in my mind today. He finished with 19 points, a Sixers career high for him, also added 6 rebounds, shot 7 of 8 from the field, 1 of 2 from 3, looked pretty comfortable shooting the 3, which was a pretty encouraging sign from me. And as far as the outlook from here, that's kind of what brings me to the point of this video, is it is time to let the young guys play. That was the number one thing that stood out to me. And yes, this was the second night of a back-to-back for this Detroit Pistons team, coming off an impressive victory over the Indiana Pacers. It was a letdown spot for them. This was a game that the Sixers should win. Let's not take that for granted, or at least acknowledge that up front. But the reality is they should be taking as many wins as possible here. Now, to take a little bit of a peek at the standings for the outlook from here, the Sixers are very clearly teetering on whether or not this is a lost season at this point. But when looking at the standings, it is not quite over yet. 4-14 on the season is far from ideal. But look at the rest of the Eastern Conference. When looking at things, the Sixers 12 games back out of first place. Let's take a peek at that play-in tournament, which of course the final seed being that 10 seed there. Just 9 games back, and it is those Detroit Pistons that the Sixers played tonight. So 3 games out of the play-in and a whole lot of season left to play. Again, far from ideal, but I do think they stumbled across something today. Now, to talk a little bit about the team stats, where I do think this reflects a little more, did want to pull these up to the side here. The first game, I believe, all season that the Sixers had a rebounding advantage. The assists, while it did not show as much as the numbers as I honestly expected, they did ultimately end with 19 assists, which is still above their average on the season. But the passes were popping, the ball was moving, it felt connected. It felt like a team unit for the first time all year. Now, we did not quite get to see the Paul George experience that we were all hoping for. He's still clearly a work in progress to me, kind of finding his sea legs and settling in. In fairness to Paul George, that it's very hard to find that flow, that stability, that, getting in the zone when you're in and out of the lineup as often it has been the case for him. Hopefully that happens when he gets a longer period of time. I will note that he did seem to aggravate or hurt his other knee today on kind of a play where Simone Fotocheco dove for a loose ball and kind of wrapped up Paul George in it. He did check out to the game after that. The game was pretty much in hand. This was later in, so there wasn't a need for him to be subbed back in. But ultimately in tonight's game, finished with 26 minutes, had 11 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, was a plus 30, 1 of 2 from 3, 4 of 12 from the field. And one of my favorite moments from the post-game press conference is Nick Nurse, when describing Paul George, was asked about his game as a whole. And he's like, how many players can you say they shot 4 of 12 from the floor, and it was a good game for him? That was the story for Paul George, and there was a lot of good that was seen, particularly once again his drive and kick game is standing out to me, and it was kind of nice to see him going face to face with Tobias Harris, because they are not the same player, and it's so evident when just watching them play there. I get the numbers are not quite there for PG just yet, but you can still squint and see how this all fits together. Now, I did want to dig in a little bit more on KJ Martin. Now, As far as his performance overall in the season or on the game tonight, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists there. The splash of athleticism is just off the charts for him. Truly capable of these highlight reel dunk contest caliber dunks on a pretty much every possession basis. You throw it anywhere around the rim and he's going to find a way to come down with it. And also give a little hat tip to Tyrese Maxey, who I think has put that far more in his bag there. I think the KJ Martin and Ricky Council madness, the spark of energy that they can provide, is so necessary to the Sixers team moving forward. Now, we've talked about KJ Martin a lot as basically this human trade chip, and it is a bit unfair to KJ for that to be the case. All I'm saying right now is you think about the player the Sixers are missing right now, it's tough to fully put into words as we've yet to see this team fully connected and fully constructed by design. So many injuries have gotten in the way of having an opportunity to see that. For tonight's game specifically, it was the 18th game of the season, and this was the 11th different starting lineup that the Sixers team has rolled out. That speaks volumes as far as the lack of consistency that we've seen on a night-to-night basis. But for KJ Martin here, think about how he fits into this team or what the team would be willing or looking to move on from him from. You can kind of squint and see it. This is a guy, a high-level athlete, a guy that can play above his size, a guy that seems to be improving from beyond the three-point arc. He talked a lot about putting in work with the shooting coach this summer. It looks more confident by my eyes, where I can't judge it until we get a longer sample size or more shots on the shot chart before fully breaking it down. But I will say he looks more confident taking it. It does look like there's a little bit of form difference in it. Feels like he's holding the wrist a little bit more, that there's kind of just, he looks more like more of a shooter this year. So I'm going to buy that. It's coming from his mouth, and I'm going to believe him that he has put the work in, made some adjustments, and that would change the outlook for his game pretty significantly. Now, what stands out to me the most about KJ is I think he's really effective as a role man, where yes, he's only 6'5", 6'6", but he's an off the charts athlete. And we saw this a little bit with PJ Tucker here with the Sixers. He was obviously quite washed up by the time he put on a Philadelphia uniform, but this was something that was pretty much a staple of him throughout his career, is you can set that screen, you can be the guy that rolls off it, gets the ball, and then you can get downhill and make a decision, whether that is attack the rim, and KJ is excellent at that because of all these athletic traits that I'm speaking about, but he's also intelligent enough and has good enough feel for the basketball sense to kick out to the shooters in the corner or make the read for a guy cutting baseline, which Kelly Oubre I thought did an excellent job at tonight. So for tonight's game, while there's going to have to be tougher matchups than facing the Detroit Pistons, you got to take the wins where you get them. And I did not want to not acknowledge Ricky Council. 17 points on the day, 5 for 7, 6 for 7 at the free throw line. Nice to see him getting back there, which is one of the better traits in his game. Pretty unique for a role player of his caliber. That is an area that he stands out in, but he does get a great whistle and attacks physicality in an awesome way. I do think it's kind of like the awkwardness that he attacks, and he's got such like flamboyant energy in the way that he goes at the rim that the steps feel weird. It doesn't look like a traditional basketball player attacking the rim, and I think that works to his benefit. That I do think the referees give him a little bit more love because of that, and that's something that players like Tyrese Maxey do not get for granted there, that they do not get the benefit of that. So it is nice to see Ricky Council making the most of that here. Now, for Andre Drummond specifically, I do feel bad to an extent that on the season overall, averaging 8.3 points, 8.5 rebounds, 1.3 steals per game. He is just 31 years old, but I will admit, I think he looks a lot older than 31 when watching him on the floor. And I've seen enough of the Kyle Lowrys, the Eric Gordons, the Andre Drummonds, the guys we know exactly who they are. For at least the short term, where there is no Joel Embiid, where Paul George is still working himself up to speed, let the kids play and let's see what happens. At least there's a pulse to this team. I didn't see any lifeless legs tonight. It was constant energy, constant motion, and that's how you're going to win games. That when looking at how the Sixers team has fallen apart so far this season, it's been everything. I was writing up an article earlier today, diving down into their stats. They're in the bottom three, meaning, or the bottom four, meaning ranking either 27th, 28th, 29th, or 30th across the NBA in points, rebounding, assists, field goal percentage, and three-point percentage there. You can't be bad at all of those things, and their defensive metrics aren't as bad as that, but they just straight up have not been generating offense. So if the cure to that is to just run and gun, be hectic out on the court, cause issues, if that's what it takes to win games until there's at least some stability or a clear plan from an injury standpoint, then so be it. Let that be the case. Let KJ Martin run. Let Ricky Council IV try and dunk on as many people as he humanly possible, or as he thinks is humanly possible, because he's going to try whoever's in his way there. So I'm excited by tonight's Sixers win. Again, they are still 4-14. There is a long hole to climb out of. But I do think that Nick Nurse stumbled upon something kind of by accident here. Even Adem Bona, a guy who we haven't seen much of at the NBA level, really impressed with what we saw from him tonight. He's active, the energy is there, he does the basic center things, and I've compared him to Paul Reed quite a bit on this. I do think they're still kind of cut from similar archetypes of players, but there's a little key difference in two of them. I mean, you will still get the frustrating things, and by that I mean fouling too much, moving screens at times, both really bad about that, and that's something that has to be worked out from Bona. But what impresses me about him specifically in comparison to Paul is whenever you give a little bit of leash to Paul or a little bit of freedom, he always wants to cook a little too much, that he's going to try and put it between the legs, take a guy off a dribble, take a step back three, and that is just not the role that you are in an NBA setting there. Adem Bona does not have that instinct, that he wants to do the basic center things. Wants to block shots, set screens, catch lobs, get rebounds, and then pass to ball handlers when it is in his hand there. It's a pretty refreshing outlook to see there, and I do think that he made the most of the moments without Drummond on the court here. So we will see what the injury updates are from here, but a very encouraging night in the Sixers world. Excited to see how things go, but I do think Nurse really needs to lean into, let's just play the young guys. At this point in time, getting a pulse, having some energy is more important than trying to get this to just manifest and work together until you have a clear plan for Joel Embiid is going to play this extended period of time. Paul George is officially full go. That's just not going to work for this in and out stuff. So let's commit to this is the way that we're going to play for now, and then adjust accordingly as other opportunities come. Obviously, there's not the top end ceiling of the Sixers team when you don't have Joel Embiid. And when speaking on a playoff setting, when the pace of play slows down, when it is a more half-court oriented style of play, you are going to need the big fella. You are going to need Paul George to beat Paul George. But for these random November, December, midweek games where you're playing the Detroit Pistons and Charlotte Hornets and Orlando Magic, who I do respect and are a good team for sure, but you're going to have better results if you are bringing this level of energy and just outrunning teams. That's what we saw tonight, and the Pistons look straight up flustered by it. So plenty of work still to be done for this Sixers team, but I think that this should be a notable takeaway for Nick Nurse specifically. Now, the last point that I do want to hit on before I wrap up here, did not see enough Jared McCain tonight, and that is a little bit concerning to me. To dive into the numbers specifically, first off, he was benched, which he's been absolutely terrific. As far as in his 7 games as a starter, he played 36.3 minutes, 23.7 points per game, 4.4 assists, 2.9 rebounds, a 59.3% true shooting percentage. He did come off the bench today, still played 29 minutes, just 3 of 7 from the field and 0 for 3 from 3. Not enough shot volume there. He ultimately finished with 7 points, 4 rebounds, did not have an assist there. My concern with Jared McCain is if Nick Nurse is trying to form him into something that he's not. He referred to him in the post-game presser as kind of the backup point guard role for him for now, which I hate to hear. Let Jared McCain go out there and cook, provide a spark, because he's in the same boat of guys that want to run and gun, want to beat guys up the floor, willing to let it fly from whatever, playing with energy. That's what I want to see from Jared McCain. So I understand he's not going to be the leading scorer as he has been for the recent stretch in the slew of injuries, but this is a useful player that you got to find a way to incorporate in this team, so we'll have my eye on that moving forward. But ultimately, I'm going to rest on the positives tonight. This was a victory, a very necessary victory for this Sixers team. Hopefully, things are all good for Andre Drummond, but I'm not rushing to jam him back into that starting lineup or really the rotation at all, at least in the short term until you see how this plays out. So prayers up to Drummond. We will need you at some point this season, no doubt about it, but Nick Nurse, take a little bit of a note for what worked tonight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you with me with the young guys for sure? Drop your thoughts below. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Dropping a like on this video. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.